great honor to announce one of our main sponsors, or is a main sponsor from us, and Marc Wilson is the founder von Appian. And Marc Wilson, we know us a bit, and I know he's a really well talker, and he is responsible for the company strategy partnership around the world. He also oversees Appian's Industry Leadership Team comprised of numerous subject matters experts from a variety of key industries. Marc routinely speaker on topics such as AI, RPI, low-code, BPM, enterprise applications platform, etc. Over his 20 years with Appian, he has worked with hundreds of clients on their approach to digital transformation and automation. Marc received his BA in Government International Relations with honor from Dartmouth College. Please, Marc, yes, you are. You're really welcome. Thank you for that you have time. I don't know which time do we have now in America?
It's about 8:30 in the morning here on the East Coast of the United.
Okay.
So it's not too bad.
I hope you eat your egg by the breakfast. Okay. Thank you so much. Exactly. It's your talk, please. Your stage is yours.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I'm joining you from just outside of Washington, D.C. In the United States. I, like many of you, would have much more enjoyed having this discussion in person, and I look forward to that opportunity, hopefully in the not-too-distant future. This afternoon, I'm going to talk to you about low-code and digital transformation. These are two terms that, depending upon who you're talking to, you're going to get different definitions of. But at the base level, we're going to talk about problems and opportunities that we have seen around these terms. You know, I know in a number of the presentations that we've seen today, we've seen the beginnings of why these technologies are important. You know, in particular, to looking at some of the things KPMG presented in their use cases around how low code is helping them tackle issues with their customers. And even as we begin to look at some of the other technologies that are out there today, there's obviously been a particular emphasis on blockchain. Blockchain, from our perspective, is a core technology going forward that's in need of effective platforms to take advantage of the important security and flexibility that blockchain can bring. So it needs to be plugged into things. So we're going to talk a little bit about what the future of those applications look like, but we're really going to start out with the past around what they look like. So to begin with, as part of the introduction, I'm one of the founders of Appian. Appian is one of the globally recognized leaders in low-code automation. We call ourselves a low-code automation platform. We came to this market. We're really one of the creators of this market, but the lineage behind Appian has been around things like business process management and workflow and case management. It's been around the construction of applications, typically at speed. And the term low-code is a relatively recent terminology that's been placed on primarily by the analysts, and we think it's a good term. But I want to start out talking about some of the issues that we see in the market today that define really the need for it. One of the realities that we see throughout customers and prospects around the world is that most software applications just take too long. It takes too long to get it set up, too long to configure, too long to customize. You know, typically software and historically software projects have been measured in terms of how many months they take, or in some cases, how many years they take. But as the world continues to change almost at a day-to-day pace, not even a quarter-to-quarter pace, software is having an incredibly difficult time keeping up with that pace of change. That pace of change is not just things that organizations have to do. It's increasingly things that organizations want to do or need to do in order to push the competitive advantages they have or overcome competitive disadvantages that they've run into. And I was particularly intrigued by the last presenter who was talking about ways to move cash in and out of countries that have historically had a difficult time in doing it. I was enamored by it, to be honest with you, as one of my jobs over the next several months is to reform and refine our own approach to dealing with Latin America. I found it an ingenious way to do it, but it's indicative of what competitive advantage means and the narrow windows that you look at for those competitive advantages. That is not something that could be done over the course of a 3 to 4 to 5 year build out. It's something that needs to be done in months or weeks because the level of competition continues to grow. But this reality we see today of things taking too long, I think, is ever present. The second reality that we see in organizations around the world is that their data and process tends to be bound up in lots of different applications throughout the organization. And these represent themselves in different ways. There's a lot of organizations that are sort of frozen in place because the core data that they run their business operations on is scattered in different places. And their real technology projects are not reforming the old technology. It's trying to figure out ways to tie these silos of data together. And as you dig deeper, you realize it's also a problem with process. Processes begin and end inside of one of these silos. And true digital transformation for most organizations is not digitizing a single application. It's not tying one application to another. It's about creating a single place to go where users can see their data aggregated or amalgamated, see their processes all the way through from start to end. So we've created a lot of our own problems with individual siloed applications that in turn have to be overcome. One of the things that I see in organizations is sort of a data spectrum. On one end, the perfect end, if you will, is our organizations that are trying to get to pristine data lakes. The idea that all of our data is in one place. And everyone sort of moves in that direction, and you never really can get there, because as soon as you get there, most organizations feel that they have to take extracts of that data to put into yet another silo that requires more update cycles. On the other end of that spectrum is where a lot of organizations constantly feel they are, and that is that data remains in that siloed state. So there's struggles along that data spectrum. The third thing that we continue to see, this reality that exists in the market, is that innovation itself is stalled by bad systems. You know, the most aggressive, the most fast-moving companies that we see today are those that don't have any technical debt, that don't have to deal with 5, 10, 20, 30 years worth of systems that are getting in their way because they have to maintain them and they have to continue to use them because that's just the way it's been done. The aggressive companies of today are those that have no technical debt, that can just build something from scratch today and move. But unfortunately, most companies are in the other boat. So you might have some good ideas and the systems get in the way. And in all three of these cases, these are the realities that need to be overcome. So when we look at what's out there to help organizations overcome them, it's not great. The first problem that we see is that organizations have invested in large monolithic enterprise systems, ERP systems, CRM systems that were put in most cases with great fanfare and large costs. And that large cost further translated into large customization costs. And many companies have gotten into this cycle where every 3 to 4 years, they have to go through it again, where that enterprise system gets upgraded. And then all of those upgrades have to require redoing the customizations that were done. And it's just pushing more and more and more money into systems that are counter to the innovation side, are counter to silos, trying to break down silos in what people do. So this enterprise software trap that originally gave the promise of quicker systems, the ability to do things without having to spend 3 years, you could just get it and go, have in essence become a way to mire down innovation and growth. On the flip side, a lot of organizations looked at an alternative method, which was custom code, the idea that you could just build something from scratch, the idea that when it was finished, it would be exactly what you wanted. But it tended to take a long time. It tended to be slow. It tended to be impossible to change once you built it the first time. So you saw these two diametrically opposed approaches. We can just buy something big that is predetermined for how we do it, or you can build it from scratch, but you're stuck with what you have for years on end. The other thing that sort of came up, and we continue to see this today, is the notion that I can buy a best-of-breed point solution, particularly in the age of the cloud, where for every problem, there's 4 or 5 companies that only solve that individual problem. The idea that point solutions could rapidly be put in and I'd solve my problem. Basically, what it amounted to was you were just pushing the problem to a different area. What has resulted in most organizations, as they've come to the conclusion that these point solutions don't work, these point solutions have left behind what I call the mushroom forest of applications. There's a little thing for everything, but it's reinforced that third reality that I talked about, that there's a lot of separation. Innovation is harmed because the real applications that are needed are ones that level the playing field for data and process. They give you access to different things. So from these realities and these problems, the low-code market has emerged. And low-code in general is the idea of being able to do things much faster. One way of looking at it, and I love this statistic, is that over the course of the next several years, more software will be created and more software will be built using these low-code methodologies than was created in the prior 40 years. That's an amazing statistic. The demand is growing, the need is growing to fill in the gaps that are largely driven by the pursuit of digital transformation. We're going to see more software constructed than ever, like aggregated. And it puts tremendous demand on the kinds of platforms and systems that are built. It puts tremendous demand on the people that are needed to construct those systems and on the organizations that are going to have to bring in that change. And we see low code as the driving force behind that. So what is low code? And that is a good point to think of here. What brings this all together? What makes, low code unique and interesting? So I'm going to read a little bit of this, but you get the general gist here that it's a new approach to building unique business applications, very fast. With a low code development platform, you don't code it. You don't build it line by line, you draw it. It's meant to be intuitive, it's meant to be quick, and it's meant to be changeable after it's created. So when we think about many of the meetings that we've all been in where we talk about the way a process ought to work, and we're drawing out the flow chart, we're drawing out the diagram, and then maybe we draw out the way we want users to interact with it. The point is that drawing that typically and historically might have resulted in a giant requirements document to be handed off for customization of a custom coded system or an enterprise application, all those efforts really should be bound up and tied into one, where the actual point, click, and configure is doing it in an environment that will automatically create that application. That's how you create hundreds of millions of applications over the course of the next several years, is through this idea of low code. So in fact, when you look at what the analysts are looking at, Gartner, Forrester, et cetera, they all view this market as what will be dominating the creation of new applications in the future. Now, low code ostensibly is about decreasing the time it takes to develop things. But there, of course, lies the trap that so many other technology whims have fallen into. As soon as something becomes popular, everyone starts talking about the fact that, oh, we of course do that. Anything that even has a web interface automatically becomes low code under that sort of way in which technology terms have been bastardized through the years. So it's important to understand how low code and digital transformation work together and what you really need to look for in low code. So one of the comments that is really one of the conclusions that I want to leave you with this combination of low code and digital transformation is this, that I view low code as essential to digital transformation, essential to that idea that you're not only going to take manual activities and turn them into automated activities, you're going to take bad ways of doing things and transform them and digitize them and bring them all together. Low code is essential to it, but it is not sufficient. What is really needed is not just the ability to do things quickly, but to do things that have a level of power and complexity and sophistication with it. One of the other truths of technology that low code can be easily characterized in is the idea that there are unassailable contradictions in most things that we think about in technology. If you think about speed, most people tend to think that I'm doing something simple. If I could do something really fast, it probably means I'm doing a basic level application. To do digital transformation with a capital D and a capital T, people tend to think of that as complex. So low code within a digital transformation context needs to be capable of delivering power behind that digital transformation. It can't just do the simple stuff. It has to do the more complex stuff. It has to be able to tie together those silos. It has to be able to handle a global foreign exchange system with different rules in different countries, not merely I need you to sign this document in Brazil in order to move one transaction over. It has to be able to handle things in a much more complex light. So let's talk about some of these principles around low code in the context of digital transformation. So first and foremost, again, low code is about speed. Point, click, and configure. In this day and age, one of the things that must exist in a low code focus is the idea that you build it once and it just works everywhere. No one wants a separate development effort for mobile applications, for example. You build something in low code screens, it needs to automatically have its mobile equivalent. You don't want, the mobile version will come out 6 months from now, because you're expecting multiple changes in that application you built over the 6 months, much less, that you don't want to add more onto a mobile development environment. What low code also speaks to is the idea of reusable components. The idea that if you build something that's similar in one department, one area of the business, that matches a workflow, matches a process in a different area, you ought to be able to reuse that quickly. That those reusable components can be processes. Those reusable components can be integrations. They can be applications that make sense in one versus the other. So for example, Appian does about 40% of our business in the financial services sector. We work with the global banks all over the world, regional banks, local banks. We work with them in many, many different ways. One of our other large industries is in the pharmaceutical space. We work with most of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies. I always have this argument, whether I'm talking to a pharmaceutical customer or talking to a banking customer, that fundamentally the processes, whether they're regulatory and compliance, whether they're customer-oriented or product-oriented, the processes generally are almost identical. What's different about them are the labels. People don't believe that until they dig down and they see the nature of the way the case management side works, or the process works, or even the interfaces work. It's usually about the idea that we have an issue that we need to resolve to conclusion, or we have an object, an entity that we have to help manage all of the different things around it that we must do from a regulatory perspective or a best business practices perspective to conclusion. And reusable components follow a similar path inside of organizations. And we've seen this, again, whether it's financial services or pharma or retail and manufacturing, there's a lot of things that organizations can reuse in their own circumstances. And you look at the way, again, prior constructions of applications have gone on. If you're talking about enterprise applications, it's hard to reuse them in different parts of a business. If you're talking about custom code, it's almost impossible to reuse it, because people have one and only one end state to think of when they're constructing that individual application. And this becomes a good way to sort of ride the middle, if you will. So one of the things that we have seen, particularly over the last few years, are the rise of new workers and new technologies. I mentioned blockchain before. Blockchain is an important and necessary feature set of future applications. In much the same way that people are going to be part of future applications, rules are going to be part of future applications, RPA, robotic process automation bots, are going to be part of future solutions, and increasingly algorithms, machine learning algorithms, AI algorithms are going to be part of future applications. The problem that we've seen today is that most of these applications tend to define themselves based on a single kind of worker or a single kind of technology. You have the blockchain project, or you have the RPA project, you have the AI project. The applications we're starting to see today, and the applications we will see for the next decade, are applications that do something that use all of these different kinds of technology. So one of the things that low code must provide from a power perspective to feed that digital transformation, because digital transformation is really about bringing all these things together, is the idea that you can have orchestrated applications that leverage all of these different kind of workers and all of these different kind of features. You will need blockchain to make sure that transactions move ahead, whether you're in the pharmaceutical space or you're in the financial services space. We've seen it in the energy space. One of the applications that we saw around blockchain was the ability to get back to the original point, the validation around renewable energy credits that we were helping create a client create a market for, and they need a traceability via blockchain back to when that renewable credit was earned. Just a standard thing that exists within an application. So we see automation, this future of automation within a digital transformation context requiring a lot of different users. So the term that we like to use for this is something we call full stack automation. And what it means is the ability to orchestrate lots of different technologies, the ones I've mentioned, plus many others, OCR, translation abilities. And they have to be neatly and quickly merged into the application that you're constructing. So low code must be open. You know, we go into organizations where there's lots of legacy that's there. There's legacy decisions that were made yesterday and legacy decisions that were made 30 years ago. Those technologies need to be integrated. They need to be collaborated. You can't just decide that it's one way and that's the pure way we're going to do it, because inevitably you run into one of those three realities that I spoke about at the beginning. Siloed data or process, in some cases services, tend to be the thing that cause problems. They need to be brought together and integrated, and they need to be able to do that at speed. One of the other things that we see as crucial to digital transformation from a low-code perspective is the ability to deal with these data silos in a way that doesn't require people to wait. One of the problems that I spoke about briefly earlier on, but I want to expand upon in data, is the idea around most software products that the surefire way to ensure that they stay inside of organizations for as long as possible is to hoard data. Architecturally, almost every software product that you and your organizations work with require the data to be resident inside of their own data sources. ERP, CRM are classic examples of this that cause the problems inside of organizations. And that approach perpetuates the siloed problem. So it wouldn't surprise me if many of you are continuing to have discussions in the context of digital transformation that start with the idea of data. How can we organize it? How can we aggregate it? How can we get to that data lake? And I will tell you that one of the new ways of handling this is just ignore it as a problem. Find approaches, find solutions that allow you to leave your data where it lies today. If it's in 3 different ERP systems, leave it there, but represent it in a virtual way that allows people to see the unification of data and process visually or virtually without having to go through the engineering in the back end to make it so. Separate application logic from data logic. We've really been able to take advantage of this, particularly in the pharmaceutical and financial services spaces, because those are environments that are defined by data silos. And if you wait for those data silos to be truly engineered out of existence, you're going to be waiting for 5 or 6 years. And there's just no way around that. Organizations can't wait that long. Low code in the context of digital transformation that leverages the ability to leave data wherever it lies allows you to move at a much more rapid pace to get things done. So in the last few minutes here, I want to leave you with some conclusions around this. So as I mentioned before, I will tell you, low code for speed alone is not enough for digital transformation. You know, digital transformation in of itself is a term that's been used in many different ways. Some people focus on the digital side. They look at manual processes, pieces of paper, and decide they want to digitize it. Transformation for many organizations is the focus. They look at bad processes. They look at processes that need to be updated and overhauled. I like looking at those two terms as a combination. It's the ability to look for more automation that allows people, process, and data to be connected together and unified into, in some cases, single interfaces, but more often than not, it's a way of making sure that the different kinds of workers in your organization, again, people, bots, AI algorithms, are all working together. It also means, to a large extent, future-proofing those applications that will allow them to continue to grow, to hook on whatever the next technology is that comes in the next year or two. All of a sudden, it goes from an application that might focus on one way of managing exchanges to now saying we have blockchain and we want to integrate that into what we do. Low code helps with that. Low code helps tremendously with that. It helps fill in the gaps. It helps you do things at a rate of speed that you've probably never done before. But it has to be able to do that in ways that are powerful. It can't just be the next generation version of, let me go build something in SharePoint, or let me go build something in Lotus Notes. It needs to contribute in a way that orchestrates data and process across multiple applications. So digital transformation, as a result, of course, is impossible without low code. The level of applications that have to be constructed over the next several years is gargantuan. Again, it dwarfs what we've built in the last 40 or 50 years. So we need tools that allow us to move at speed. And of course, I'll finish with these last points. And again, some of these remain contradictory. In order to have true digital transformation at the pace that the market demands today, you need speed and power. Low code helps deliver that. True digital transformation is really about unifying and connecting different workers, data and process, bringing those things together in the most effective way. And the true applications that are going to transform organizations in the future aren't going to be defined by their feature sets. They're going to be defined as things that have all of those feature sets combined. You're not going to have in the future the AI project or the blockchain project. You're going to have the project that has AI and blockchain. So look to low code as a way to help you down that path, but make sure when you're looking at low code that you're looking at low code that can provide power and not just speed. Thank you for your time this afternoon. I appreciate it.
Marc, thank you so much for this wonderful and really impressed examples or what you told us from lectures here. And I think it's need a longer time to understand everything what can a low code do for us in a company, like in a SME, for example? Is it possible to can transport this knowledge, or is not really a good solution because I don't know how is the price for that, for the solution, and it is payable for smaller companies, or it is only a solution for really big companies like KPMG and PwC and like that. We have two questions from our chat room. Can I send it to you? Because we can talk about it. It's okay, you have time again. So thank you. Diane Isenegger makes a question. Isn't risky to have all data stocked in one place because of many factors such as the internet insecurities, people concerns on their privacy and the data location, future insecurities, etc., mainly in the sector of digitalization?
So I'm going to piece out some things from that question because I think it's going in a certain direction, and my apologies if I'm not completely answering it. Yeah. One of the reasons that we have seen this as an approach to digital transformation be particularly interesting to organizations are precisely because of the risk questions and the data question. Mm-hmm. With the approach that we're talking about, what it does is it allows you to preserve a lot of your legacy system. So this is an approach that doesn't require, in a standard way, ripping and replacing older applications. Yeah, yeah. I'd like to say we can leverage your prior investment. It's not unusual for us to go into a banking customer where there is one or more core banking systems and we leave them there. We can leverage the core systems that exist, and the unique applications are constructed in a way to tie into those core systems to make them more effective. So I think that de-risks things. We've seen numerous applications where the idea of data anywhere, leaving data where it lies, actually ensures a level of compliance and a level of sophistication that in many cases can't exist in other platforms, because it allows us to leave data in Switzerland, leave data in the UK, leave data in Canada, but allowing the applications access to that data as needed without running afoul of regulatory compliance issues. Okay. And I'll conclude with one last statement there based on the question that you asked prior to it. We have seen this work just as well in 250-person organizations as we have seen it work in 200,000-person organizations. That need for speed and power, that need for applications in the moment for a competitive advantage is just as vital to the small enterprise and the mid-enterprise. And I think this actually makes it more accessible to them because a lot of those larger stacks have required such an upfront investment. It's very risky for them. This is actually a way to really de-risk approaches for large and small organizations.
Okay, thank you for this answer. And Martina, I have a next question. If the creation of applications becomes faster and faster, what does that mean? Appian's implementations partners, will they run out of business? Will clients do their projects themselves?
That's a great question. One of the things that we have seen, speaking to our partners, and I run our global partner team at Appian, the level of enthusiasm by partners of all sizes, from the KPMGs down to smaller regional partners that we have, has never been higher. And what the transition that a lot of these organizations are going through is, there used to be a mindset of, let's find a big project and do it for 3 years. And now the mindset is, we can get this project done in 8 weeks, but there's a line of 15 other things the organization wants us to do. Success begets success. When you're successful in delivering one, they want you to deliver 3. We have yet to see the end of that. As I mentioned in that graph that I love, that talks about the hundreds of millions of applications that are going to have to be constructed over the course of the next few years. The number of applications that are needed is only growing, and it's growing at an exponential rate. I don't think we're ever going to run out of things that need to be built. We may see more people building more things, but the need for that level of expertise that's not just technical, that's business-oriented, that's transformation-oriented, that's never going to end. You can build a lot of bad applications, so you need good advice.
Okay, thank you for that, Marc.